But anyway, welcome to our podcast. Today we're talking about Ahsoka episode 5, Shadow Warrior, which was fucking crazy.
There's a reason Rosario Dawson called it her favorite episode.
Yeah. We obviously have thoughts galore about it, and how it's going to go forward in the timeline. But first, if you're here for the podcast version of this video, which usually goes up on Saturday at noon, the time codes of our conversation, maybe not today so much, will be in the description, but also in the description will be all of our social links like Facebook and all that other shit, Discord. So you should go check that out, subscribe to the things you care about. And a special thanks to Connor at the Star Wars Hub and Star Wars Veritas, who is a partner of ours. We love him very much. And then after this, I'll be playing Battlefront 2. The conversation about Ahsoka will continue into that. Unfortunately, you won't be here with me today. That's all right. But we'll keep talking about it. And then on Sunday at 7, we're gonna do Gungans and Dragons. I think it's our fourth or fifth episode.
This is the third.
Yeah, or maybe I think it might be the fourth, but
something like that.
Yeah, and that's our Star Wars RPG tabletop project we're working on. It's been a ton of fun.
So far, we are the reason Jabba has this palace in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it's canon. Sorry, that's how it is. This is a live stream, and since we're doing a remote today, I'm sitting right in front of my computer, so I can read these chats really well. I don't have to squint and look at my Chromebook. Chris says, thank you for your awesome content. Daniel and Chris, may the force be with you. Jedi Enclave, I was blown away by the episode. I liked it too. Which, by the way, toward the end, we will be reading some responses we got to a post I made earlier about people's impressions of the episode and everything. Jimmy says, I hear a cricket. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nothing I can do. I tried to hunt the motherfucker down. right before you came into the call here. I went around and tried to listen, but as soon as I walked over there, he just stopped chirping.
Well, clearly the answer is just move your entire desk over there.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know. I was telling you, a lot of people might not know this, but I purposefully do not kill spiders in my basement or in my house, because spiders, and I know that we've been kind of conditioned to be very afraid of them, but they're actually almost 100% harmless. And are really useful, actually. And I'm just waiting for one of these spiders to find this cricket down here and just eat him or something. Just attack the motherfucker. It's I give you free rent down here, you motherfuckers. Go get this cricket, please. Ruining my podcast, goddammit.
Very nice of those spiders.
Yeah. Also, there's not a lot of news today. Go ahead.
The news that there is kind of a bummer. So Bespin Bulletin is reporting that Skeleton Crew is effectively delayed indefinitely.
Yeah, which we knew. We that was something we talked about last week. That they're because of the strikes and everything. So that I only saw two things today really worth mentioning. The first one is that Pablo Hidalgo, who, if you don't know who that is a member of the Lucas Story Group. And if you don't know what that is, it's a group of guys who are mega experts on canon, on Star Wars canon.
Don't they say something super pretentious, like they guard the flame?
Yeah, they guard the flame,
whatever.
right? Yeah, it's that's kind of their job. Is to, whenever the talent comes in to write a movie or a TV show, they have to run all their scripts past them so that they can say, well, there's this thing that you don't know about in this one comic where this is a direct conflict in what you're writing, so you can't write this. They get to write it a different way, or that's not how the Force works, or something like that. But he's Pablo Hidalgo is famously very spicy online and likes to go after Mike Zero and Star Wars Theory, which I fucking love. And he, without saying anyone's name, went after Mike Zero and Star Wars Theory last night and tweeted, "Can't believe tonight's the night Ahsoka presses the erase the sequel trilogy button." And then directly under it said, "Be skeptical of people who lie to you for money. Keep that in mind, and everything else is cream cheese." Which I am just first of all, I love you. Don't ever stop doing what you're doing. but I love how he didn't even have to say anyone's name for us to know exactly who the fuck he was talking about. And if you don't know, like the whole thing, Mike Zero has been, and Star Wars Theory to an extent, has been spinning these lies on YouTube about how they're going to use the World Between Worlds to like cancel the sequel trilogy. And this issue is not about whether or not you think that's a good idea. Like, you could have that opinion. That's perfectly fine. I think it's kind of a stupid opinion, but if you want to debate it, let's debate it. Like, that's fine. You're perfectly within your right to want the sequel trilogy not to exist. How the problem here is YouTubers purposefully lying to get clicks, which is what Star Wars Theory and Mike Zero and Geeks and Gamers and all these other fucking dumbasses on YouTube and social media do. And you should be mad about them as well as we are, like, because they just make shit up, and they target people's desires and fears, and they know that people will be like, oh, that'd be so fucking great in the comments, and they believe it's true, and then when it doesn't come true, it's just like this whole cycle of cognitive dissonance and bad logic and all this other bullshit. When it was never going to happen, they were never going to erase the sequel trilogy. We knew this. I think anyone reasonable knew this.
It's so obvious that they poured so many hundreds of millions of dollars into making those films. Yeah. Of course, they're not just going to throw them away.
Yeah, and like I said, this isn't an issue of I don't like the sequel trilogy. Like, that's fine. I don't care if that's what you like. That's not what's funny about this. What's funny about this is that Pablo Hidalgo is going after Star Wars Theory and Mike Zero, and I'm like, fucking go for the jugular, man. Do it. The other thing is, I read that I guess Taika Waititi made a joke that he's never going to finish a Star Wars script,
which might not be as much of a joke as you might hope it would.
Right, and for those of you who don't know, he's apparently doing a Star Wars movie,
supposedly.
Yeah, and stuff started happening, and then like someone asked him about it like a couple months after they brought it up, and he's like, oh yeah, I haven't written that yet. And they're like, but you needed to write it because how are you going to make a movie?
It's your movie. You're supposed to write this shit.
Yeah. And he's just like, eh. And then like skitters away. Like, you'll never catch me. Because that's exactly what Taika Waititi would do.
He's got so many other projects. I don't blame him for being busy with other things. He also, where's the fucking script, man?
Yeah, he's also famously, he has a very famous short attention span, and will go from project to project and have trouble focusing on any one thing and everything. So like the other thing about Taika Waititi is that he says shit like this just to rile people up sometimes. Like when the news came out that he was doing a Star Wars picture, he was like, oh, I'm so glad this got out. I cannot wait to ruin everyone's childhood with my Star Wars movie. So like it's hard to tell. I don't know. If we get a Taika Waititi movie with the strikes and everything right now, even if it was happening, it's so along in the future that we'll probably be dead by the time it even comes out. But it's one of those things where I hope it happens, but if it doesn't, well.
All right, I think we've stalled enough.
Yeah,
it's time for Ahsoka.
Well, I'm not stalling. That's the only thing, because all the other news this week is about the newest episode of Ahsoka, which was kind of a big deal. And we're going to talk about it. I want to do some spoiler-free chats about it for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
So the music was just spectacular. Like the music has been great this entire show, but this episode, I think,
it particularly was great. Yeah. Kevin Kiner is a genius, and I wish I had realized. Like, I liked the music in Rebels and
Clone
Wars, but it's like we've mentioned this before, that because they use they use digital instruments, that it didn't sound very real. Like the performances were kind of gross, and it sounded like I don't know, 8-bit like video game music.
The other thing is that like my enduring musical memory of Clone Wars is that like the Star Wars opening theme with the drums under it that they use at the beginning of every episode, and that's just like not fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. Which, by the way, just a weird musical thing. They took the Star Wars theme, which is everyone famously knows is in
B flat, right?
well, no, it's in cut time, which is two beats per measure. And you can count it in 4 if you want to. If you're not a musician, this might not mean anything. But the intro to Clone Wars, he took that symmetrical pattern and made it into a 5/4 bar instead of cut time. So instead of going bum 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 bum, bum, which is all like it's like you can divide it into 2 bars perfectly. He puts an extra beat in so that it's in 5. And puts a lot of like weird percussion and shit behind it. And I get it. They're like, we want a different theme, but we want it to be exactly the same. What do you got? And he's like, I guess I'll put it in 5/4 and put some weird drums behind it. Yeah, they're like, that sounds great. I've never held it against him. It's whatever. And after you watch enough of those Clone Wars episodes, like it starts to grow on you a little bit, and it's like, that's not so bad. But having his music being performed by live musicians, I feel like I say this every week since Ahsoka has started, has been a treat because it's so good. And I noticed he uses music, I mean, obviously to underscore dramatic moments, but like he set up a joke in this episode that I wonder if people caught, that I was like, that's really funny. I'll point it out when we get to it in our on our recap. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, everything is more or less the same quality-wise.
So I don't think it's a spoiler to mention that there's de-aged Hayden Christensen,
right? Yeah,
in
obviously,
this episode, like a significant amount of him.
Yeah,
and he looks pretty darn good.
I think he looks better. If you're wondering why I'm throwing things, I'm trying to get this fucking cricket to shut up. He looks better than he did at the end of the last episode to me. And I'm not sure. So I went back and watched that again. And honestly, he didn't look that bad on a second viewing in the first place. So I was like, okay, whatever. So this time around, I'm sure that a lot of the scenes that he's in have more dynamic lighting. So I'm sure it was like a little bit easier to control and everything. I think they're showing off the tech. And I'm pretty sure it's not the last of that particular tech we're going to see.
Oh, absolutely not.
So that is super exciting. So the performances were great. The music was great. The general reception I've seen online so far, like going through comments and stuff on social media for official Star Wars posts about the episode, people generally overwhelmingly love it. And it, like, you know who their audience is on this episode. It's literally people our age who grew up with the prequels or who discovered Clone Wars and really liked it, and who, you know, despite Hayden Christensen not being a great actor in the prequels, will always be our Anakin Skywalker. Like, that's just what it is.
Like he's the guy who was cast, so he's Anakin.
Yeah, like love him or hate him, Hayden Christensen is our Anakin Skywalker, and I'll be damned if seeing him as Anakin Skywalker again wasn't like, holy fuck, man, this is so fucking cool.
The only thing they didn't do super great is like Hayden Christensen's voice. He still sounds 20 years older than he did in the prequels. And like, maybe it's something about his accent, but he sounds more Canadian than usual.
He is very Canadian.
Maybe it was me.
I mean, he is famously Canadian, so that could totally be it. So when they did Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett, they used AI to recreate Mark Hamill's voice to sound like it did.
Yeah, and that sounded really weird.
Yeah.
Like that tech was not ready when they used it.
The problem they had with it was getting the mouth movements to match what he was saying. And so that's why if you watch the episode, like a lot of his lines are like ADR. Like you don't see his face when he's actually saying the lines, because like trying to animate a human face is terribly, terribly complex, but also the human lips and mouth are insane. And so like, they're like, oh, okay, this is never going to look right. So we're going to have the camera on Grogu every time Luke Skywalker has a line.
Well, he's like flipping around and cooing all cutely.
Yeah. And other than that, I think this was great. I know what everyone was super excited about in this episode, and I had a lot of fun with it too. However, the other stuff that wasn't that was really good for me too. And it's got me thinking about I mean, this was the mid-season finale. This felt like a season finale.
Yeah.
And we still have 3 episodes left of this fucking show, by the way. And I'm pretty sure that things are going to get more insane than they already are.
I think they have to. Yeah.
So we're going to spoil it now. So if you've not seen this yet, it's worth the watch. And it's worth experiencing it on your own. And not experiencing it with me going off notes that I have when I watched it that are only half here. And I'm going to have to do the second half from memory because I don't know why my notes didn't sync. That's not the best way to consume this episode. Unless you are really into me and you want to do that, and that's fine. That's the thank you, first of all. But, it's so much better to watch. So you're warned. Spoilers, get the fuck out if you don't want to know anything about the episode. Though, if you've been on social media at all today, I doubt that there's any way that that hasn't been spoiled. So
yeah, like if you've been reading anything today, it's been spoiled.
Yeah. Also, give me 1 second here.
Well, it's our show. You can have as many seconds as you need.
Oh, I'm gonna take at least 3.
That's plenty of time for the cricket to begin.
Oh, it's not the cricket. Don't worry about what it was, because I don't want to explain it. Also, Tony says, hello there, gentlemen. Hello there.
Hello there.
All right. So, also, Tony, if you just got here, fucking spoilers. For you in particular. I don't know who the fuck you are. Spoilers. Everyone else, spoilers. Okay? So if you get him, just like 2 weeks ago, someone got in the comments of our live show, was like, spoilers, man. And it's like, motherfucker, I warned you like 8 times.
Yes.
Don't come at me. She's also a 50-minute episode. This is the length Star Wars episodes should be. They shouldn't be 20-minute episodes. Kathleen Kennedy. I'm kidding. Kathleen Kennedy's fine. Okay, so we open on this like Game of Thrones as fuck style sweep over Cetos, where they're showing you the landscape. They've got the music to remind you what happened. And it reminds me of every Game of Thrones episode that happened after a big character death. Where, like, it would happen, the episode would end, the beginning of the next episode, like in House of the Dragon, when the king dies, spoilers, when the king dies, and then the next episode is just, like, through the quiet castle with, like, soft music and everything. And it felt a lot like that. There's also previously on, like, if you haven't seen it, Ahsoka lost the fight against Balin Skull, which, to be fair, he's a fucking monster. So, like, I wasn't...
Sabine handed over the map and then got kidnapped, and the bad guys all escaped.
She's got a lady boner for Ezra, and so she made a bad choice, which I totally get. I've made bad choices for boys, too. I totally get that. So, Hera lands and approaches Space Stonehenge, right? And she got, like, her blaster out. She's like, I'm in a SWAT team. A one-woman SWAT team. And like she looks around, figures everything is okay. And so Jason Syndulla, this adorable fucking little kid, and Chopper come down the ramp, and she's like trying to think about whether or not to let him come off the ship, whether or not it's too safe. And it's like, ma'am, you brought your son into a space battle. Like, is this the best time to be doing your good mom thing?
Yeah.
You almost died in the last episode. You almost killed your child. So you know what? You should probably just let him go explore if he wants to go explore. So there's no one there because everyone's gone. It's eerie as fuck. Yeah. It's great, right? And she gets on the phone to Carson, who is probably my favorite X-Wing pilot ever, and is like, all right, we missed whatever party was happening down here. So that's probably bad. And Carson's like, yeah, we don't have anything up here either. Cause they're like flying around, like scanning the skies and shit. And she's like, all right, you keep scanning. He's like, I was going to do that anyway. Don't tell me what to do. So
you don't tell me how to do my job. I won't tell you how to do your job.
So despite the fact that she is a fucking great pilot. So Hera has a look around with Jason and Chopper, and they hear a sound. They hear like rocks tumbling off the thing. And so like there's this amazing moment. I think my favorite part of this episode, aside from the Ahsoka stuff, is any scene Jason Syndulla is. And I have in my notes in all caps, he's adorable and must be protected at all costs, because his first thing, and this is a rehearsed move that he's done before, runs behind Chopper and hides behind him. And Chopper, he's so small that he fits right behind him and you can't see him. And then like after a couple of beats, fucking sticks his head around the like the side of his head and was like, what's going on? I fucking love him. The actor they got for Jason's great. So it turns out it's Hugh Yang standing on the cliff, like holding Sabine's helmet and like looking out over the water, and Hera's like, don't jump, it's not worth it, Hugh Yang. And he's like, I told them to stay together, but they never fucking listen. And this is, by the way, more proof in a full list of proofs that we've given that droids are sentient beings with emotions. And this is a horrifying implication in the Star Wars universe, because while they're really nice to Hugh Yang, there are droids, most droids in this universe are imprisoned. And they all have slaves. Yeah, they all have the capacity for sentient thought and emotions. And I want that to sit with everyone for a second. The next time you see a droid in Star Wars, it's like that is a living thing by any reasonable definition, and it is a slave to the person that owns it. Just putting that out there. Anyway, cue title card. Great music, as always. So meanwhile, in the world between worlds, this is right after, Ahsoka. It's at the end of the last episode. Ahsoka sees Anakin, and Ahsoka's like, fuck, you look good. Like a little CG, but good. And Anakin's like, you're older than I expected. And she's like, that's not the fucking line from the movie. And she's like, okay, so you're still an asshole. Like, also, when time progresses, people age. So don't give me a hard time about this. Also, what the fuck just happened? And Anakin's like, you lost a fight. And she's like, I don't remember that. And he's like, oh, trust me, you probably got your ass whooped. And she's like, oh, right, Balin's skull. And he's like, okay, yeah. First of all, isn't he fucking cool? Also, yeah, he whooped your ass. So it's a good thing that you remember, because it means you still have a chance to live. And Ahsoka's like, okay, like cut the bullshit. What is generally happening here? I don't understand any of this. And he's like, I'm here to complete your training. And she like gives him a look and is like, you're way too late for that.
There are so many things wrong with this.
You have been dead for a very long time. Well, not that long.
Like 5,
a few years. Yeah. And Anakin's like, yeah, well, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And Ahsoka's like, again, asshole, what's the lesson? And he says, live. And then he draws lightsaber, fucking mind-blowing musical cue here. And he draws the lightsaber, ignites it, or die. And I'm sure this is the first moment of many moments in this episode where every Star Wars fan came in their pants. Even me, I was like, God damn, this is good. Because
for me, it was the line after this where Ahsoka says, I'm not going to fight you. Yeah. And Anakin says, I've heard that before.
Yeah, right. That's a great callback, by the way. And I wonder if a lot of people caught it. It's a clear it's a clear reference to Luke and their duel on the Death Star. Ahsoka's like, yeah, I've seen this movie before. I'm not going to fight you. And he's like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. So they clash.
Good fucking luck with that. As he swings at her.
This fight choreography is great, because they do a great job of channeling Anakin's movement from Episode 3. He looks like he did it in Episode 3. And there's something about his fighting that is so fierce and heavy. And it's kind of like watching if Vader had full range of motion of his shoulders. like if he wasn't a damaged husk of himself, it's like you forget that at the height of his prime, Anakin Skywalker was a terrifying warrior. And you just get that sense from him moving around, and it was like that's pretty cool. I ordinarily don't come in my pants unless Luke is involved somehow, but like this one, I was like, I'll make an exception.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, Jason Syndulla is like hanging out, looking out over the ocean. Which, by the way, it totally makes sense now why Balin's skull was sitting there looking out at the water in that one episode, because he now that you go back and watch it, the look on his face is like, there's something fucking weird about this water. Like, what is this? So he's sitting there doing the same thing, and Chopper is scanning for life, a la R2-D2 from Empire Strikes Back when Luke goes missing on Hoth. And Hera's like, all right, Hu Yang, what do we know? And Hu Yang's like close to nothing. The ball of destiny with Eternity Bits has been destroyed. Like wherever they went, we can't follow them. And Hera's like, shit. Well, once we find Ahsoka and Sabine, we'll figure it out. And Hu Yang's like, I don't know about that. And Hera's like, well, what do you mean? Do you think they were aboard the ship? And Hu Yang's like, I mean, I hope so. Like every passing moment without finding them means that they're either on the ship or they're dead. And I would much rather them be on the ship. So let's just pretend that that's what happened.
Let's just think positive for a few minutes.
Because thinking about the other thing fills me with dread. And because I'm enjoyed with feelings, I do not enjoy that. And Hera's like, that's a good point. So Carson shows up and is like, so we're overdue at HQ. And Senator Organa, who, if you're new to the Star Wars franchise, is Leia. You might remember her from Return of the Jedi, where she wore a bikini, if you're that kind of Star Wars fan. Can only cover for us so long. So apparently Leia is like behind the scenes where like Mon Mothma's like, where the fuck is Hera? And Leia's like, I sent her to the store. She'll be right back.
I think Mon Mothma is like kind of on Hera's side, has to deal with the Senate. She can't be, though. Like officially right, she can't.
She has to be impartial. Yeah, right. She has to be impartial. Which, by the way, there's a great fucking story about Mon Mothma in the newest From a Certain Point of View, where she goes hand to hand with a probe droid.
Oh.
And it's fucking great. And it's the mission she's on that she has to personally go and do is getting the intelligence from the Bothans that died.
Okay.
And it's a really neat story. Everyone should go read it. So Hera's like, okay, well, we're not leaving until we figure out what happened here. And Carson's like, okay, but the brass is going to start asking questions. And like Jason like starts to pull on her shirt and it's like, Mom. And she's like, hush, fucking adorable little baby boy. Like we're talking. Maybe, and just stick with me here, them asking questions might not be such a bad thing. And Jason's like, listen to me, woman. Like, there's something about the water. And Hera's like, I don't fucking get it. It's an ocean. And he's like, just stop and listen for a second. And so she's like, okay, well, what am I listening for? And he's like, you don't hear it? Like the lightsaber fight that's clearly happening in my head. And there for a minute, I'm like, oh, he's having a force thing. And then like Hera starts to hear it. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. There's something weird about this planet.
So like, is Hera force sensitive? Which I don't think that's true. I don't know. So
I think the point of Sabine's training is that everybody at least has the potential for the Force. It's just in varying amounts.
Yeah. It's funny, and when you learn how to be a music teacher, one of the things they teach you is that every kid has the capacity to be a musician, and that that capacity is like a bucket. And some kids' bucket are really big, and they can fit a lot of talent in it. And some kids' buckets are really small. And I imagine Sabine's bucket is just really small.
So, I imagine most people's buckets are really small.
Yeah. So, they're all having a moment. Hera and fucking Jason. And Hu Yang knows enough about the Force not to like get involved and shit. And Carson's like, guys? And Hera's like, zip it. Fucking Carson, get back in the sky and start scanning again. And Carson's like, we did that. And she's like, that wasn't a question.
Do it again.
Yeah. And so he's like, okay. And so she gets on the ship. Carson looks befuddled. Okay. And so Hu Yang like stops and he's like, listen, Jason has powers. His father was a Jedi whose name was Kanan Jarrus. Looks at the screen and winks. And there's this funny like swell in the music that stops. And then Carson's like, oh, okay. Well, why didn't you just lead with that? Like, that's all you had to say.
So.
Jason has force powers. Like, that's all you had to fucking say. So, meanwhile, Anakin and Ahsoka are fighting. Ahsoka is like doing a pretty good job. Turns out she's a pretty good fighter. And like she like almost kicks the CG right off of Anakin's face, right? Like she does this like cool little flip, like kicks him in the face. And she's like, yeah, maybe you ain't as hot as you thought. And Anakin's like, bitch, please. And he severs the entire walkway in the world between worlds with his lightsaber. Which, how, first of all?
Considering we don't know what the fuck Anakin actually is,
or even if she's actually in the world between worlds, or if this is like a whole hallucination that she's like sharing with people who care about her, I don't know. So
again, there is something weird about the Force on this planet,
right? Yes. So Ahsoka plummets into an abyss, and she lands somewhere sandy with lots of smoke and poor visibility, and a fucking clone trooper wearing Phase 1 armor runs past her, right?
She lands in the volume. That's where she lands.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So it's revealed that it's not adult Ahsoka. It's little baby Ahsoka that we knew from Clone Wars. And by the way, it's played by Ariana Greenblatt, who played little baby...
Gamora
in Infinity War, right? I thought it was Daphne Keane, but not the same person. But by the way, Ariana Greenblatt was in Barbie, which John and I watched the other night. It's actually really funny. So anyway, Anakin charges past her with his lightsaber. He's like, "Fucking sand! I hate it here." And Ahsoka's like, "Wait, like what the fuck? This is the Clone Wars." And Anakin's like, "Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, and you are a literal child. Let's run into a battle zone together and fight a war."
This, by the way, is a perfect encapsulation of how terribly the Jedi treated the war.
Yeah.
Like, let's just take 12-year-olds right into the middle of battle. What's wrong with that?
It is easy to forget because it's an animated show. And while Ahsoka is humanoid, she isn't real. She's not human. Mm-hmm. It's kind of easy to forget that she was a literal child, and having like a live action actor, a young live action actor play it, you're like, that is a literal child that they just threw into fucking space Vietnam. And
that's against all the Geneva Conventions is what that is.
It's insane. It's just like the Jedi probably deserved to all die. Well, maybe not be murdered, but the Jedi Order definitely deserved to have fallen. Like, it would have been better if they would have been, I don't know, brought to trial or something. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's insane.
Yeah. Like, let's come back to this in a few minutes and keep going with the plot.
Yeah. So Ahsoka's like, I don't get it. Like, why are we here? And Anakin's like, well, you don't know, and that's your problem. And he just like runs off. And she's like, wait, like, what about my fucking training? And he's like, this is your training. And she's like, this is not helpful. You're not telling me anything. So the scene changes to a staging area where they're taking care of like injured and dead clones. Ahsoka's like looking around in horror, which is funny that we have young Ahsoka, but with like old Ahsoka's brain apparently and experiences everything. And Ahsoka's like, oh my fucking God, we lost so many people. And Anakin's like, you lost so many people. And she's like, this is all my fault. Like, they were following my orders. And Anakin's like, well, this is war. Like, it's our job to lead. And sometimes we make mistakes that cost lives. And Ahsoka's like, that's not okay. Like, tell me you understand why that's not okay.
Like, I'm 12 years old. I should not be making decisions that impact the lives of thousands of people.
Yeah, exactly. And Anakin's like, we have to adjust to the times. Like, when I was a Padawan, we were keepers of the peace. Now we're at war, so you have to be a soldier. And Ahsoka's like, I mean, is that what I'm going to teach my Padawan? Like, how to be a fucking soldier? And he's like, don't take a Padawan. They suck. Like, teaching sucks. I fucking hate it. And Ahsoka's like, how the fuck are you making jokes right now? There are dead people everywhere. Like, it's not as bad on the other side because they're all machines. We're all alive. And everyone's dead, and it's my fault. And Anakin's like, I don't know. I make jokes easily because it's kind of who I am. But, like, look, I'm just here trying to teach you how to lead and survive. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to fight. And she's like, well, what if I don't want to? And he's like, well, then you're going to fucking die. Sorry. So he runs off with some clone troopers, and there's this fucking inspired shot of Anakin disappearing into the smoke with cannon fire. And the cannon fire lights up the cloud. And he changes from Anakin to fucking Darth Vader. And there's a good musical hit, and it's like head chills. It's like, that's so fucking cool. And it's not even the last time they do it in this episode.
This whole scene really encapsulates why Palpatine won.
Yeah.
Because over the course of the Clone Wars, more and more Jedi came to think like Anakin. Like, we are warriors now. We need to fight. We need to... Like, the Republic is something we need to defend from external threats, not internal concerns.
Yeah.
And fewer and fewer Jedi were thinking like Ahsoka, like, we're supposed to protect the Republic and support it from within. Like, we are part of what keeps it working, more or less. We're not
we have a much
purely
different role.
fighters.
Right, yeah. It's one of those things where I've said this before, that everyone's like, oh, Ahsoka's not a Jedi anymore. And I think the whole point of that story was that Ahsoka never stopped being a Jedi. Like, the Jedi stopped being Jedi. And that's where the problem was.
Like, she was arguably more of a Jedi than
Any of
the
them.
Jedi Council
Right.
by the end of the war.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And that's also partly on Yoda, because honestly, fuck Yoda from that particular period of time. So, meanwhile, Hera and Hugh Yang are flying, and they're looking around. And Carson's like, we have been scanning the same area over and over. And Hera's like, yeah, just keep scanning. And he's like,
I've been in this cockpit for 17 goddamn hours.
I smell so
I
bad.
need to piss.
Yeah.
I'm running out of fuel. I need a snack.
This
I am
jumpsuit
cranky.
really seals the flavor in. It smells so bad in here. So to Hugh Yang, she's like, he might not be wrong. Like, we're going to get stranded out here. Bad shit's going to happen. And Hugh Yang's like, you're going to take your kid into battle with you. And Hera's like, I'm going to take my kid into battle with me. None of this is good. And Hugh Yang is like, well, luckily the New Republic is like a phone call away. And Hera's like, fuck those guys. I don't like those guys that much. And Hugh Yang is like, speaking of which, I am surprised a little bit that you convinced them to let you come here. And Hera's like, this is not what happened. They told me not to go. I told them to fuck themselves, and then I came here. And Hugh Yang's like, word.
All right. Yeah.
And Hera's like, okay, Hugh Yang, stop fucking with me. Where are they? People don't just fucking disappear. And Hugh Yang's like, no, they don't. Well, actually, they can.
Ordinary people don't, but like Jedi.
They can, and they have. Like, there's Yoda, there's Ben Kenobi, there's Luke, there's Leia, there's Ben, like, actually a lot of them disappear, but it's probably not what's happening here. I don't think. Entirely possible. I don't fucking know. And Hera's like, so what I'm taking from this is that there's a chance they're still alive. And Hugh Yang's like, oh yeah, I mean, Ahsoka is stubborn as fuck.
I haven't seen any bodies, have you?
Yeah. And like, that bitch does whatever she wants, like, just like her master. And Hera's like, well, what was he like? And Hugh Yang's like, aside from like a child murderer, he was pretty intense and insane. And frankly,
I love that Hugh Yang like hesitates before answering. Like,
he doesn't. I
see him thinking, yeah.
I like his little digital eyelids.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, he was intense and a little insane, and frankly, everyone was really terrified of him. And she's like, that actually makes sense now. Okay. So Jason calls her on the phone and is like, so Chopper thinks he found something, and he gives her the coordinates, and he's like,
you need to get really low.
You're going to have to fly low. And she's like, how low? And she's like, I don't fucking know, Mom. I'm not a pilot. Like, low. Get as low as you can. So she's like, okay, I guess we're going low.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Ahsoka is in a new memory. She has 2 lightsabers now. In the previous like tableau, she only had 1. Mm-hmm. This was after. This is during.
This is the last season of Clone Wars.
Right. Yeah. The actual last season that came out a couple years ago. She's got her 2 lightsabers. She's fighting against Mandalorians with the fucking bomb ass Darth Maul helmets and shit. Mm-hmm. And she's doing pretty well, by the way. There's a great Rex cameo where Rex is like, hey, good job.
Tamura Morrison,
yeah,
by the way.
And Anakin shows up and he's like, what battle is this? And she's like, this is
I don't recognize any of this shit.
I would remember killing Mandalorians. Like, that sounds kind of fun. And she's like, well, this is the Siege of Mandalore. Like, we'd already broken up by this point. And he's like, this looks fucking intense.
Yeah, kind of wish I was here now.
It's like, it was. And he's like, you're doing a great job. Like, you're a warrior now, as I trained you to be. And she's like, oh, for fuck's sake, Anakin. Like, is that all we were ever destined to be? And he's like, Ahsoka, look, all the Jedi, all the knowledge I possess, I got it from Obi-Wan. He got it from Qui-Gon. And he got it from fucking Dooku, which was probably a mistake, actually, now that I think about it. And he got it from Yoda, which who the fuck knows if that was a mistake or not. Mm-hmm. Like, you're part of, like, a legacy. And she's like, well, my part in that legacy is, like, of death and war. And he says, you're more than that because I'm more than that. And Ahsoka gives this like chilling line. Who's like, you are more than that, but also you're fucking crazy and you're powerful and you're more dangerous than anyone ever realized. And Anakin's like, people will not stop bringing up the child murder thing. Like, I don't understand why people keep bringing this up.
I did that one time.
Yeah, it's like once. Uh-oh. Are you still there?
Yeah. Are you not hearing me?
Yeah, no, I am. I got a weird message from, okay, anyway. So she's like, okay, but pretty much she's like, okay, look, I'm tired of, you've learned nothing. And we're going back to the beginning where I gave you a choice to live or die. And he draws his lightsaber and you get Ahsoka's reaction where she sees him draw the lightsaber and she's like, oh, this again. And then she looks up at his face and she's like, oh, God, what the fuck?
God.
And the camera swings around and it's fucking yellow-eyed, evil Anakin, Darth Vader, right? Yeah. And she's like, no, I'm not doing this. And he's like, that is the wrong answer. And starts swinging at her. And there's fucking bomb-ass music. He yeets her out of the tableau she's in back in. He like just kicks her ass like into a different fucking dimension, right?
Back to the world within world, between worlds. And
he comes like barreling out, and then like 1 second he's Anakin, the next second he's fucking like Darth Vader and all the armor. Like he says something, and it's like half Vader's voice and half his voice. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that was so cool. That was a really cool vocal effect.
He says something about her lacking conviction, and she's like, well, I'm trying to stay alive. Like, so he's like, okay, I'm going to kill you now. And they do a little fight. She gets disarmed. But if you're an Ahsoka fan, you know that she's actually done very well against lightsaber wielding opponents unarmed. So she does fine, and she disarms him. And there's this moment where she has his red lightsaber, and it looks like she's like, I might just cut your fucking head off.
She's just holding it right up to his neck.
Yeah. And she kind of like her eyes turn yellow just for like a split second. Like she might just lose it and just kill him anyway. And then she kind of collects herself and she throws the lightsaber. Oh my fucking God. I wonder if they'll go after her like they went after Luke. The second time Luke threw a lightsaber, not the first, by the way. And Anakin's like, like, maybe you're not a complete idiot.
Maybe you've learned something.
Yeah. And then he just fucking disappears.
Yep.
And she looks around and is like,
well, the way it works
Anakin?
Is like she hears something. She looks over her shoulder. And then like the camera pans around her and it does that trick where like she occludes Anakin and then she's gone.
He does a Batman where he like he probably just like ran like 2 feet away where she couldn't see him and just like waiting for her to leave. Yeah. So there's this beautiful moment. It's very religious. Where she has a baptism, pretty much. Where
she wakes up, she's like 20 feet below the surface. Well, the
water,
ocean.
like the water, kind of envelops her, and she surrenders to it and shit. And she's rescued by an X-wing pilot. And I'm gonna do a little bit skipping ahead because I don't want to. We don't have to focus on like crazy shit. So
we've hit most of the important parts.
Yeah. So she wakes up. And Hugh Yang's like, you've been out for like 10 days, so good job. Or one.
I don't think it was 10.
One,
I think it was
one
like
rotation,
yeah, one rotation.
Yeah, and Hugh Yang's like, by the way, Jason Syndulla was the reason we found you. And she's like, oh, sweet. Also kind of makes sense. So she goes out to hang out with them. And she's wearing this. There's this very clear allegory with Gandalf the White in this episode. It's very obvious, and it's meant to be obvious. Dave Filoni has said so many times how he takes inspiration from Lord of the Rings and how Gandalf particularly is a big source of character inspiration for him and stuff. And he made it pretty literal, actually, which is fine because, like, you know, that story's old as fuck anyway. Okay. So pretty much, like, she gets caught up on what happened, and she's like, okay, so I'm gonna go. Carson's like, guys, the cops are here. Everyone run. And Hera's like, you figure out how the fuck we're gonna find Sabine. I'm gonna go deal with this.
I'm gonna go talk to the cops.
And so Ahsoka is like, well, thankfully I've got this psychometry power, and she like goes around and figures out what happens, and then like Hera sends Carson up to distract them, and it's so fucking funny because like he pulls up, he's like identify yourself please, and she's like,
You
it's
fucking
Margaret.
know who we are.
We had drinks last week. What the fuck are you doing? What do you mean? Identify yourself. And he's like, sorry, I didn't catch that. What was your name? And she's like, oh my God. And tell me what's going on here, or I'm just going to shoot you down. And he's like,
Carson's like, okay, I'll tell you, but you're not going to believe
I'm going to
this.
tell you, and I'm going to tell you the truth, but you're not going to get it. Like, I'm just putting, I don't know if I understand what's going on, but here it is. So
I think somewhere in all this, Mon Mothma calls Hera and they're talking, and Mon Mothma's like, okay, did you find Balin's skull or
No.
Morgan Elspeth? And Hera's like, no. Did you find evidence that Thrawn's coming back? Hera's like, no. Mon Mothma's like, okay.
Oh my God.
I need you to come
Hera,
back to
you're
Chorus.
killing me.
I need you to come in. I need you to bring Ahsoka so that she can testify on your behalf, so that you don't get run out of the military and possibly, jailed.
Yeah. Also, there's this hilarious moment where Hugh Yang takes Jason onto the ship, and because he's like, oh, it's a Jedi ship, and he's like, oh, that's fucking cool, and he's like, I'm gonna show you the training room. He's like, oh, are you gonna train me? And Hugh Yang's like, no. And he's like, do you know how to build lightsabers? And Hugh Yang's like, yes. And he's like, are you gonna teach me how to build a lightsaber? And he's like, no. Well, actually, you can't be any worse than Sabine, so maybe. It depends. So Ahsoka figures it out. Her plan is to take the Jedi ship up, and this woman loves getting out of her ship and walking around top of the ship while it's flying. Finds the biggest motherfucking Purgle there is, right? And was like, hey, do you know where they went? And he's like,
Pearl's like,
yeah,
kind of.
I do. Yeah, it's the same place we're about to go. And she's like,
so he's like,
sweet.
hey, you want to give us a ride?
Can we like catch a ride? And he's like, yeah, man.
Yeah, just get in my mouth.
Yeah. He's like, I would have taken the other guys if they asked, but they didn't ask. So we're leaving pretty soon. And she's like, oh,
perfect. We need
great.
to go right now,
Yeah.
actually.
So it's like a Jonah and the whale thing where they park the ship in the Purgle's mouth, and he's like, you guys all strapped in there? And the 3 New Republic ships, like the captain looks up and there's a pod of Purgle flying. She's like, oh, what the fuck is happening?
What are these things?
And she's like, okay, get out of the way because this is probably going to be bad for us. And the Purgle's like, you don't have to move. We'll go around you.
Yeah.
And there's this amazing musical moment. Fucking like season finale vibe music. And the Purgles are like, fuck you. And they just like take right off, right? And but before she goes, she tells Hera, she's like, I promise I'm going to find him. I don't know how the fuck you're going to get over here. This is probably a mistake actually going by myself. But you very easily, actually, now that I think about it, this Purgle could probably fit 2 ships in it. He's fucking huge. But anyway, see ya.
Hera's like, nah, I gotta go face the music.
Yeah, also, there's only so much danger I can put my kid in. So, and that's
by the way, I'm so glad this episode explained or like gave a reason why Hera brought Jason along. Like, it doesn't make sense in the moment that she did it, but like the plot required Jason to be there. So she could find
right.
Ahsoka.
Yeah, they wouldn't have found Ahsoka without him, which is kind of I really love that character. I'm gonna read through a couple of comments that were on a thread. Actually, hold on a second. Jimmy says, as someone who has seen the Clone Wars movie and every single episode in season, the only issue I had with the first Clone Wars flashback, they used the wrong clones. Basically, episode 2 clones. They weren't the wrong clones. They were Phase 1 clones, which would have been there for.
Part of the first season.
Yeah, I don't. Well, now I'm thinking about it. I'll do more research on that. I don't think they're the wrong clones. I don't know. I'll look into it. They might be. I don't know.
We'll come back to that. Yeah.
Anakin and Ahsoka first mission together was to rescue Rhoda the Hutt. I don't think that's the mission they were on, though. I don't know. Like I said, I'll look into that. Isaac says, I think that the exchange between Anakin and Ahsoka feels unfinished. The lesson cannot possibly have been you must choose to live. Which I generally, I actually, like, I kind of get that. Though I don't think her her thing, like her adventure into weird mystical Anakin-y things, is entirely over?
I think what it is that for at least some time, Ahsoka had been focusing more on fighting and like being more Anakin-ish.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that lesson was to help her return back to what she actually believed in.
Yeah.
The more Jedi than the Jedi
Yeah.
thing.
Jonathan says, World Between Worlds equals what if, expect to see Darth Maul. No, that's not what the World Between Worlds is. And you should go check out what Dave Filoni has said about the World Between Worlds. He said specifically, it's not time travel. It is not a what if scenario. It's a look at all the moments that are important to the person who is in it. And that the things that happen in those portals always happened. And so like Ahsoka getting pulled, like rescued or whatever, that always happened. And you like, he couldn't pull Kanan out because Kanan died, and that always happened. Yeah. And like, you couldn't change that. So it's, go listen to what the man has said about the World Between Worlds. He's an expert. He created it. He would know. I've been really, Ken says, I've been really enthralled with Filoni's rhyming like poetry, the sequels from Star Maps to Missing Jedi to X-Wing pilots, stalling cruisers with humor. It's a really good point, actually, and it's a point I appreciate a whole bunch. Also, a little callback to Pablo Hidalgo's, we're erasing the sequel trilogy, not. Hera will get court-martialed but redeemed when Ahsoka returns, ? Says Elijah. I don't know, maybe. I think she's going to find a way to get there. Which, by the way, this is one thing I want to say before we're finished here. This episode has this vibe, which is it's a lot like Empire Strikes Back, where the middle has this feeling where the good guys get some small victories, but at the end the bad guys win. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that's what we're headed for. I'm pretty sure they're going to get there, and they're going to find Thrawn, and Thrawn will have accounted for her getting there. He always
almost
does.
Certainly, yeah.
Like that's who Thrawn is. Like, he knows Ahsoka's showing up. Like, you can guarantee that he knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew how Morgan Elsbeth was going to do her thing. He knew that there were going to be people that followed her, that followed her in, and he's got a plan for it. And I think that Ahsoka is going to be terribly out of her depth when she gets there. And I'm pretty sure that the season's going to end, and we're going to be going into Dave Filoni's movie where they're all going to have to figure out how to beat Thrawn, and that's going to be the film. And I'm almost also still very positive, clinging to this idea that, look, if Jason Syndulla is sitting there getting feelings from the Force about all this weird shit that's happening, there's no way that Luke Skywalker doesn't know about it too. Also, they mentioned Leia, so I would also bet that if Leia knows what's happening, that Luke probably knows what's happening.
I think there's a decent chance.
And I'm pretty sure that what's going to end up happening is that you're going to see Mandalorian, you're going to see Din Djarin, that is. Din Djarin and Grogu, Boba Fett, and Robo Abs. What's her name?
Yeah.
Ahsoka. I think those are the big Dave Filoni things.
Just the Avengers.
And Luke Skywalker. I think that's pretty much what's going to happen, is that they're going to be like, in fact, in my head, I've
just throw everything in there.
Yeah, we were fantasizing a while ago on the Battlefront stream that we're gonna have here in a minute, where like they're gonna be sitting around a table or something after having failed, and then like Luke Skywalker is gonna show up and pull his fucking hood back and be like, "Who the fuck is Thrawn? Let's go," and that'll be the whole thing. And I'm pretty sure fans will die, because that would be pretty neat. So we've got Battlefront right after this. The conversation will continue. We'll hope to see you guys there. So if I didn't get to your comments, you can put it there, and it'll be easier for me to respond to stuff because I'll be just playing video games. Like, not a big of a deal. So thank you. Have a good night, and bye.
Bye.